The bully slammed me into the lockers, and she stepped between us before the door had stopped rattling. My name is Earl Prout. I have been the custodial services coordinator at the Aldermere Naval Station Fitness Center for 19 years, and I want to tell you something that happened on a Thursday afternoon in November that I have told my wife every detail of, and that I still have not found all the right words for. I will try again here. I was mopping the corridor between the weight room and the locker bay when it happened. The fitness center was mostly empty in the middle of the afternoon, a few people on the cardio equipment, one or two in the free weight section, nobody I needed to work around. I had my cart in the corridor and my mop, and I was doing what I have done every afternoon for 19 years, which is not remarkable. Then Staff Sergeant Garrett Weil came through the weight room door. I knew Weil. Not personally, not by name until later, but I knew the type he was the moment he came in, because 19 years around military fitness centers teaches you the categories quickly. He was large, he was confident in a way that required other people to know about it, and he had a black belt displayed on his bag in the way a man displays a black belt when he wants you to notice it. He had been coming in for 2 weeks. He was always the loudest person in the room, and he had a habit of setting himself up near whoever was working hardest and offering commentary that was phrased as advice, but was designed as advertisement. He came through the weight room door and turned into the corridor, and I was there with my cart, and he walked straight into it. Now I had the cart to the side. There was space, but he walked into it anyway. The way a man walks into something he has decided is in his way rather than something he has failed to navigate around. He looked at the cart, he looked at me, he looked at the wet floor sign I had posted. "You need to keep this out of the walkway," he said. I said, "Yes, sir, I apologize." Because that is what I say, because I have been saying it for 19 years, and it has always been the correct thing to say, and it does not cost me anything that I count as significant. He said, "Maybe post the sign somewhere people can actually see it." He picked up the wet floor sign from where it was in the center of the corridor, exactly where it is designed to be posted, and moved it to the wall. I did not say anything to that. I moved the cart. He moved to go past me toward the locker bay entrance, and then he stopped and turned back, and he picked up my cart handle and moved the cart another foot toward the wall, harder than the task required, hard enough that the buckets rattled and the mop fell and I had to catch it. "Keep it out of people's way," he said. I bent down to get the mop. I heard her before I saw her. I heard a voice say, "That was unnecessary," from the direction of the cardio room door. I straightened up and there she was. She had come from the treadmill section, still in her workout clothes, a water bottle in one hand. She was not a large person. Medium height, lean in the way that means something specific when you have been around athletes long enough to read what lean means in a specific body. She looked at Weil with an expression that was neither aggressive nor apologetic, simply direct. "He had the cart where it needed to be," she said. "The sign was visible, you moved it." Weil looked at her. He had the particular look of a man who is deciding how seriously to take an interruption, and the calculation was visible on his face, and it was going in a direction I recognized. "Appreciate the input," he said. "Not your business." "It became my business when you knocked his mop out of his hand," she said. She did not raise her voice. She had the same volume she would have used to tell someone the time. That was the thing I noticed first, that her voice did not change with the stakes, that she used the same register for the observation she would have used for anything else. Weil straightened. He had 4 or 5 inches on her and 50 or 60 pounds, and his black belt was right there on his bag, and all of it was apparent to him. He moved toward her. Not a charge, a placement. A deliberate movement into her space to communicate something about the space. "How about we take this conversation somewhere else?" he said, and he meant the gym floor, and everyone who was still in the building understood he meant the gym floor. She looked at him for a moment, then she said, "All right." She walked to the gym floor. She did not hurry. She put her water bottle on the bench at the edge of the mat, and she rolled her shoulders once, the small private roll of a person working out an old familiar knot, and she stood in the center of the mat and waited. What happened next took less time than I am capable of describing accurately. Weil came onto the mat with the certainty of a man who has done this many times and never lost. He was moving to establish a grip on her shoulder when she slipped the grip, not with a step back, not by retreating, but with a small inside rotation that I could not have explained even watching it directly. And then her hip was past his hip, and the technique was already happening before he had registered that the first one had missed. The mat caught him, he was on his back, he was looking at the ceiling. He got up. He was not a man who stayed on the floor, and I will give him that. He got up and reset, and he came in with more care the second time, lower stance, hands in a better position. She let him work for 2 full seconds, let him move, let him think he was establishing something, and then she took his wrist with one hand and used the leverage of his own forward momentum, and the mat caught him again in almost exactly the same place. He stayed on the floor a moment longer this time. She stood in the center of the mat and waited. Her breathing had not changed in any way I could detect. He got up the third time with something different in his face, not exactly fear, the recalibration of a man whose arithmetic has stopped working. He came forward, and she let him close, and she used a technique that I later learned is a shoulder lock entry from a standing position, a technique that requires the other person's own strength to complete, because the harder they resist, the more efficiently it works. And he went down on his stomach this time with his arm at an angle that made him tap the mat before any of us had drawn a breath. She stepped back, she released the hold, she waited. He did not get up immediately. He sat up eventually, and she offered her hand to help him to his feet. He looked at the hand, and then he looked at her face, and the calculation in his expression had changed completely from what it had been 40 seconds ago when he moved toward her on the mat. He took her hand, she pulled him to his feet. Good reflexes, she said. She meant it as a factual assessment. He had good reflexes. The reflexes were simply not sufficient for the encounter because the encounter was not at the level his reflexes were calibrated for. He picked up his bag. He looked at his black belt. He looked at her. Then he walked to my cart and he picked up the wet floor sign and walked it back to the center of the corridor and placed it where I had originally positioned it. He looked at me. "Sorry about your mop," he said. Then he left. She came back to the bench and picked up her water bottle. She looked at me, and there was something in her expression that was not satisfaction, and was not pride, and was not any of the things I would have expected from a person who had just done what I had watched her do. It was closer to concern. "You all right?" she said. I said I was fine, and I thanked her, and I meant both of those things fully, in the way a person means something that they know they will still be meaning 5 years from now. She nodded. She picked up her towel from the bench rail, draped it over her shoulder the way a person does when they are returning to an interrupted routine, and went back to the cardio section. Now, I did not know who she was in that moment. She was a woman who had been on one of my treadmills for 40 minutes before the incident, and whom I had noted as a regular without having attached a name to. I found out more in the following days, and the fuller picture arrived through a conversation between 2 petty officers in the locker bay that I was near enough to overhear while I was working. Her name was Lieutenant Commander Sierra Volan, and she had been at Aldermere for 6 weeks. She had transferred in from a posting I had not heard of in the context of anything public. She had a background in SEAL support qualification, which is the kind of background that means a woman has passed a training pipeline that was not designed to be passable by most of the people who attempt it, and that does not become public unless you research it specifically, which the petty officers had. Her call sign in the community was Lighthouse. I found them the next day and asked one of them what lighthouse meant. He thought about it for a moment, the way a person thinks when the answer is something they have understood but not yet been asked to say out loud. I think it means she keeps showing up in the dark, he said, and she tells you where the rocks are. I thought about the wet floor sign moved back to the center of the corridor, about the voice that said that was unnecessary with the same volume she would use for anything else. I have been the facilities coordinator at this center for 19 years. I have been treated as part of the furniture by a great many people in a great many situations, and I have made my peace with that because it is not personal. It is simply a category of invisibility that a man in my position learns to account for and to work inside of. She did not treat me as furniture. She saw what happened, named it accurately, and addressed it without waiting to be asked. Her record, once I thought to look it up in the way that public service records can be looked up, ran to 11 years of service and a decorations list that I am not equipped to evaluate in detail, but that the petty officer who had already done the research described as, and I am quoting him, not something you see without having done something that most people cannot do. Staff Sergeant Weil came back to the fitness center 10 days after the incident. He was quieter. He worked his program, cleaned his equipment without being asked, said good morning to me when he came through the door, and said goodbye when he left. On his third return visit, he stopped at my cart in the corridor and said, "Your signs are always where they should be." He said it looking at me, not at the sign. Then he went into the weight room. I do not know exactly what he went home and thought about after the mat. I know what I went home and thought about, which is the voice that said that was unnecessary without raising its volume. The readiness that was present in a woman on a treadmill who nobody in the room was watching because there was no reason to watch her. The hand offered to the man on the floor. Her call sign was lighthouse. When it is dark and the water is rough and you need to know where the rocks are, a lighthouse does not make announcements. It does not negotiate with the weather. It simply operates the same light, the same interval, the same purpose, until the person who needed it has found the shore. I think about that on my Thursday afternoons, and I think about her water bottle on the edge of the bench, and the 3 seconds it took her to decide, and the way she rolled her shoulder once before she walked onto the mat. She said she was going back to the treadmill. She went back to the treadmill. That was all, that was the whole of it, and it was more than enough.